quotes. So please be very wary of committing plagiarism. And that's one of the reasons that I'm going to link the plagiarism to an exercise related to your assignment, but we'll get to that later. Plagiarism means stealing someone else's work and lying about it afterwards. And plagiarism can also be defined as an instance of using someone else's work and thereby implying that it's his or own work. And in the academic world, the whole idea of plagiarism is really seen as theft, and it's a very, very serious problem. It's actually ironical. My daughter used to work at the university, and she often would receive emails from somebody in America who was trying to sell her a degree. So you see, plagiarism is not only an offense, it's quite an industry on its own. The big problem with plagiarism is that it really damages the student. Because first of all, they don't learn or practice proper academic skills. In your group, the ENG1501, somebody contacted me about referencing, and she asked whether she even had to acknowledge that some of the information that she used in her assignment that came from our class, from the workshop. And I advised her to do that, and I even gave her a way to acknowledge that. I think that's taking it a bit too far in your first year, but it's such an important academic skill that you really need to be able to reference correctly. The next thing is that if your assignments are put through Turnitin, so the lecturer or the examiner can immediately see how much of your essay or assignment has been plagiarized. And if it's more than a certain percentage or count, you fail. So you won't get, they fail you on because you have committed plagiarism. And that means that there isn't very intense feedback on the rest of your essay. You still get feedback, but I mean, you've already failed. Why should this person now spend time on giving you hints on how to improve? They tell you you've committed plagiarism. And in her case, the student that I told you about, in her case, she still didn't know how to reference a website. So the big problem with plagiarism is that you do not receive good feedback on your academic work. And the rest is that you get a bad reputation. It is like at school, if you've stolen once and something disappears, everybody watches you. And at the end, plagiarism is a crime. If you've made money from plagiarism, you can be prosecuted. And if it is found that you have obtained your degree through plagiarism, it may even be revoked. UNISA has a very strict policy on plagiarism, and here is the website. You have to go and read through it, and at the beginning of every year, you should read through it again so that you can keep in mind what the rules are, because the university is very strict on plagiarism. The rule is absence of knowledge is not proof of innocence. So if you say you didn't know, it doesn't matter. That will not count as an excuse. Sorry, I just need to, there's a glare in my room. I just need to clear one more window. So the next question is, which students then are vulnerable to plagiarism? And it's important that we think about it, because if you recognize any of those characteristics in yourself, or know that that was a problem, you are aware of it, and then you can note while you are working, let me not make that kind of mistake. The first is if you haven't been properly trained. Now, the school system, and I can't believe any school system prepares you properly for referencing and quoting correctly. So if you do not know how to quote, if you are ignorant of the rules, it's very likely that you will commit plagiarism. The next one, and that is a big problem, is your inability, if there's an inability to paraphrase and summarize. I want to explain to you the difference between paraphrase and summarize. Summarize is when you simply report what has been said. And that is a vital part of making an argument. You need to recall the facts, or in the case of literature, the events, what people said, what they did, to support your argument. Paraphrase comes in, and we are going to work a lot on paraphrasing today. Paraphrase comes in when you actually have information, in your case from the study guide or from other books. There is information, but you simply can't copy and paste. You need to be able to put it into your own words. Now, to put something into our own words, we need to understand it, and then we need to replace the words and phrases with words and phrases of our own. And that is an academic skill that you need to develop right through working for your degree. And then a very general problem is second language students often lack the proper language skills. And it's not only vocabulary. Sometimes there are metaphors in information. For instance, I read a student's assignment last night, and she was quoting from a book in which one of the phrases was to bury development. And she kept on speaking about to bury development, but that's a metaphor. It is, how do we know that she understands the metaphor? So what I mean by lack of proper skills is that sometimes we don't see the techniques people make to convey information, and then we do not paraphrase, and then we are penalized. And then it doesn't happen in English, but it may happen in other groups or in other modules, where you are given a template and you have to work according to a template. And when you work according to a template, it's very easy to commit plagiarism. Then, if you have an educational background that placed a lot of focus on memorization, an example would be if you were in a school and you took history and life sciences, and you had teachers who asked you merely content questions. What happened? When did this happen? Then you learn to memorize the facts, but you do not learn how to put it in your own words and how to think critically about the facts. And that is a big problem. So if your most important subjects in matric or grade 12 nowadays were subjects that forced you to remember, you will remember your study guide, but you may not have the ability to put it into your own words. And that can be a very serious problem. People think that because they can speak English fluently, or that because they are first language English speakers, or because they've been to good schools, various reasons, people think that they can write good academic English, but that may not be the case. And then instead of developing their own academic language, they keep on repeating, that they take the words. And when I read assignments critically, I can immediately see, even though I don't put it through Turnitin, but I can immediately see where a student has copied from a textbook, because the whole style is different. Your way of writing is in a way as individual as your fingerprint. So when you copy from somebody else, it is as clear as when somebody is wearing somebody else's clothes. It doesn't always suit you. And then if you work in groups, and I have spoken to you about these WhatsApp groups, if you think of the essays that you have to write paragraphs of 15 lines and more. In a WhatsApp group, you have a different kind of format that you work with. And it's fine for working with that on a WhatsApp group, but it's really not appropriate for developing English as an academic language. Therefore, if you want to be in a study group and you have made friends who study with you, rather use Zoom, because Zoom has the advantage that you can actually, if you do not buy Zoom, you only have 40 minutes. And that means that you don't spend a lot of time chatting about it. So you focus more, and because you chat, you get ideas, which is fine. That's one of the things about studying, that you also learn from other people. But if you hear it, you need to understand it if you want to make notes. And therefore, you are less likely to commit plagiarism than when you copy an idea from a WhatsApp group. You guys must really be extremely careful of WhatsApp groups. The reasons for plagiarism, as I've said, if you have a problem with academic English, then you want to convey an idea, the problem is that you do not have the words to convey an idea. Then you steal the idea and the words. And then if you have insufficient training, so that's why we have these workshops in which you are trained to not to research. In your case, you need to go to the study guide to find the information and the structure, and from that you learn how to write. And then, if you are not interested in your field of study, you do not take extra trouble and you belong to a WhatsApp group and you collect a few ideas and this and that, and then you simply do not, you don't want to make the effort to get the necessary academic skills. But why should you then quote? First of all, it shows the examiner that you have, that somebody else believes or has the same opinion. So it gives some kind of authority to your opinion. And it proves, in this case, if you use your study guide, it shows the examiner you have taken the trouble to go through the activities and you are serious about your studies, and that can only be to your benefit. And a quote also shows respect for the other writers in your discipline. And in literature, when you quote from the poem or the short story or the novel, it grounds your answer in the text. And it prevents you from going off on some other tangent. You have to write about the character, and then you glance at the study guide and you start writing. But if you quote, it forces you to concentrate on the character, in this case, in this short story. At this stage, we are going back to the chat so that I can see if you have any questions, and you can also ask questions on the chat. Are there any questions?
Ms. Staljaard, can you hear me?
Oh, Jandre, I don't know who's speaking, but it's better to type the question into the chat group, please.
But I can't type. When I want to type, it tells me only team members can chat. Ask the team member to make you a member.
You know what? Please send an email to CT in Touch, because that means that you aren't linked correctly to the university's server. and they see you as a guest, not as a student. So please send an email and mark it urgently. Adele, are you still online? Because give her Richard's, if you can type Richard's email into the chats, then they can see that. I can't remember his
Yeah, I
email
can
off by
also
heart.
not see any chats.
Beg your pardon?
Sorry, that's the same for me. I cannot find where the chats are. I'm having trouble with that.
Okay. We aren't so many people, so maybe if you are prepared to give everybody a chance to speak, it's put on your microphone, and then because I think we're only about 10 or 12, it won't be absolute chaos if you speak. I've also now made my speaker increase the volume. This was it the Lewis person who spoke now about not being able to access the chats?
Yes, it was me, Zenith.
Okay, listen, um, I'm going to leave this and quickly go to my Outlook to see if I can get Richard's email. Then you can send him an email immediately and ask him to link you properly.
Okay,
But
thank
please,
you.
thank you. If you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. Otherwise, we hear all the secrets of your household. And I promise you, at the end of lockdown, we don't need anybody's secrets. So please just give me time to there is Richard's email address. So please send him an email and mark it urgently, and CC me on the email so that I can check with him, because he might also be teaching at the moment, so that I can just check with him that he has received the email. Is that fine with you people?
Ms. Stalliard, it's Chandra again.
Yes.
Where do we see the email address? Because I can't see anything.
Oh, you can't. Okay, I'll spell it. I'll spell it to you. Sorry, that
Thank
was
you.
not the brightest move. Okay. I promise you, I'll put on the video, then you can see I'm not really blonde. I just had a moment. It's
Fine.
WRIGH1
One, yes.
at unisa.ac.za.
At unisa.ac.za. And your email address? To CC
ETAL
TAL, yes.
JAM
JAM.
at unisa.ac.za.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Must we put in the subject again our student number?
Put your no. You can put your under your name. Give your you have to, supply him with your full name.
Yes.
And then your number. Oh, and another thing, please send this from your My Life account.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you
Thank
still
you.
remember the bit. Okay.
Yes.
Any questions up till now about the plagiarism and so on? Have I so much scared you guys that you now are too scared to answer a question, or do you know everything about plagiarism? What I want to tell you about plagiarism is that if you look at the moment at the whole discussion about the coronavirus, the discussion went off on a very dangerous trend, so badly that the government has made it illegal to spread false information about the virus. So the ability to take knowledge and to interpret it and to apply it is a life skill. It is not confined to ENG1501. It is a skill that if you do not have it, you have a difficult life. Because we're not all Cyril Ramaphosa or Fauci or Boris Johnson that will have to take a whole country through a crisis. But life has crises. People die. People get divorced. People get retrenched. Somewhere in the next 10 years, you are going to live through a crisis. I don't know what the nature of it will be. And then you will need to get advice. And these skills that help you not to plagiarize are the skills that will help you to find information and at least to be able to evaluate and apply the information. So I'm sorry, because usually people think, plagiarism, I don't need to know anything about it. But that's not true. It is really a life skill If you could look at me, I think I'm older than the lot of you together. I've had my own crises, and every time I've been very glad that I have the ability and that I was taught as part of the thinking I needed to do for my degree. Every time I'm so glad I have the ability to look at information. Of course, I've made a few very serious mistakes in my life, and I've made the wrong decisions, but at least afterwards I could even see why I've made the wrong decision. So the skills that you need to cope with a degree, many of those skills are life skills as well. So I see that you are so quiet, and let's assume that's because you are know so much that you don't actually need any questions on this line. Current slide. So when you quote, it's important that your punctuation works with the quotes. And this is true whether you do it in English or in any of your other modules. The first very important sentence is, if the end of the sentence is also the end of the quote, the full stop is inside the quotation marks. And do you see here I've marked it? You are quoting what the scholar said. And the end of your sentence is the end of the quote. Then the full stop is inside the inverted commas. For those of you who did maths at school, inverted commas are like brackets in mathematics. And it's very important whether something is outside or inside the brackets. So it's important whether your full stop is inside the brackets or outside the brackets. If a sentence ends on a quote, but the full stop is not part of the quote, then the full stop is outside the quotation mark. Do you see my next sentence? I only quoted a few words, and it's not the end of the sentence. Then my punctuation mark, my full stop, is outside the quotation marks, and that is very important.
Miss Staljaard, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt again.
No.
But I heard you said now can we see what you are doing or the sentence, but I still can't see anything. So I can only see your face. Yes.
Okay, I'll put myself off. Thank you for doing that.
I don't know. I see there's an option that only meeting organizers can and presenters can share. So I don't know if you must share something with us so that we can see it from our side.
But
because when you put off your video now, it's only your name that's standing there.
Okay, let's see if we go back now. Do you see my screen now? Okay. So do you want the pearls of wisdom again?
Yes, because we haven't seen anything so far. This is the first time it's coming up, so I think it's best if you just show us everything again.
Right from the beginning.
I don't know if it's for everybody else, but I've been seeing your face the whole time. I didn't know if I
Oh,
should say anything.
and it's not even a pretty face. Okay.
It is, don't worry.
Um, Up till now, if you've heard what I've said, it's actually fine. But here, when we speak about the quotation marks, you really need to see. So I think if you have taken into, sorry, guys, you must put off your mics if you're not speaking. Okay. Can you see now?
Yes, we can see Miss Talwart.
Okay. Now, do you see that in this one, if the end of the sentence is also the end of the quote, the full stop is inside the quotation marks. And do you see here, I've marked it. The quotation marks are there, and the full stop is, you can't make the mistake actually when you type. But I don't know whether all of you have access to laptops or computers to actually type your assignments at the moment. Some of you will have to write it, scan it on your cell phone, and submit it that way. And because you can juggle around, you know, I've been a teacher long enough to know they sneak that full stop under the quotation marks, then they can argue if it's on the wrong place. And that is to warn you, it must be clearly inside or outside. So when the sentence ends and the quote ends at the same time, the full stop is inside the quotation marks. But if the sentence ends on a quote, but the full stop is not part of the quote, then the full stop is outside the quotation mark, as you can see here. Does that now make sense to you? Because as I've said, the quotation marks are like the brackets in mathematics, and it makes a difference whether something is inside the brackets or outside the brackets. So another problem that I see in or that I saw in the people who sent me some of their assignments is that you quote and then you simply put something at the end of the sentence, and you do not develop a style where the quotes seem to be a natural part of your argument. And I want to focus you on two ways to do it. The one is that you look carefully at your introductory verbs. And that is a quite important skill, because if you start thinking in terms of your introductory verb, if I'm going to quote what this person said about the poem or the short story or the novel, and I start thinking, but does he claim? Does he argue? Does he contend? I move into interpretation, and I'm less likely to commit plagiarism. Do you understand that skill? I'm going back to the chats quickly. Guys, can you hear me? Is there anybody with access to the meeting chat?
I don't have access yet, Ms. Taljaard, but I can see on your screen.
Okay, that's fine, because you were so quiet. I wasn't sure you were still there. Okay. Okay, now you are putting my mind at ease. Now I feel a bit better. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't put off my WhatsApp because that's the way that we communicate. The head office is communicating with me while I am teaching. So I'm sorry, my WhatsApps are going, but maybe I can, yeah. Then at least you won't see my private WhatsApps coming up. I'll just have to have my phone with me. Okay, so let's go back here. The introductory, I've spoken about the introductory verbs, that the moment that you start thinking in terms of how am I going to convey the tone, or how does he present his argument, you move towards interpretation, and then immediately you move one step away from plagiarism. Another way is to use transition phrases like according to, or concurring with that opinion. Now you've read 2 articles about the short story, and you see that A agrees with B. And now immediately you start forcing yourself to think about what you've read, and you give your thought processes, you give them a road to travel. And because you aren't merely following a GPS, you are thinking, do I turn right? Do I turn left? So the moment you start thinking like that, you start moving away from plagiarism, and you have mastered an academic skill, and you aren't merely copying what you've read. In a related article, do you see that if you use techniques like this, you really upgrade both your thought processes as well as your language? When you cite a quote, your citation should include the name of the author. You have to have the year of publication, and the year of publication for your study guide, because you need to work from 501. The year of publication, this one will be, I saw it somewhere. Find it. Otherwise, the 501 is definitely 2019, whereas 102 would be 2020. And you must have the page number correctly. That is one of the reasons that while you are writing and you find information somewhere, you need to make a note and cite it immediately. You can't write your 3 or 4 pages and then hope to find the exact page numbers afterwards. It really doesn't work. And believe me, it doesn't work. Now, here are examples. When the person I have quoted has also written either the article or the book. I use his name, and then I only have the date that it was published and the page number in brackets. And it's not an option, this format. You don't use other brackets, you use these brackets, and you use a colon between the date and the page number. If you quote, you take somebody's argument, and that is from page 13 to 15. It's 13-5. Close the brackets. If I quote an opinion or information, but I do not use the name, in that case, I have the name, the date, and the page number. There, do you see the comma? And do you see the colon? And that, remember I spoke about people aren't trained in the conventions of academic writing. And this is what I meant. If you think you can simply put a colon there, a semicolon, or a comma, you move outside the conventions of correct quoting. And then, if two people, say for instance, Longyear in his book, referred to Marcus, and Marcus had a theory, or he declared something, whatever. Do you see? Then you refer to the person who had the idea, bracket, the name of the author of the book, the year it was published, and then the page number. And this was done according to your study guide 301. So this is the convention that they expect of you. Most of you are also part of the College of Education, aren't you? Which means that you have more than one module. Now, not all the departments have the same rule. In every module, please go and look for how you need to quote. I'm going back to this, so that I can see, or that we can have time for you to have questions. Are there any questions about how to quote at the moment? If you had been my matric class and I'm training you for the end of the year exam, I would have walked up and down in the class and made sure you made notes about the correct way to quote. It's a pity I can't walk up and down, but that's one of the problems with the lockdown. Okay, let's go back. Now, what I have done is, it's very dangerous to work through an assignment with the students, because that now is a recipe for plagiarism. And then you fail and I lose my job. So what I have done is, I've taken your assignment and set similar questions on another short story, which is discussed in your tutorial letter, and where I want to teach you how to find answers and put them in your own words. Those of you who have access to the chats will, if you, those of, let's go back to this screen. If you click on that chat, you will see on top there is files. Are you now with me? And there I've uploaded the, are you guys with me?
I'm struggling to find that files, Ms. Stolyard.
Okay. Are you, do you have this screen in front of you?
Yes, I did join the correct one. They sent me the link, so I'm on the same screen as you.
Okay. Do you see here on the left-hand side, there is, click on that.
Chat, okay.
Then you see there's the chat where you can ask me questions. And then if you click on files, it's next to chat.
I don't have that in front of me.
Oh, but I can't see exactly who's speaking at the moment. But
It is John Ray.
Yes, John Ray. The problem is that you aren't linked yet.
No, I am linked because I'm on the new screen as well. I received an email.
Okay.
And they sent me the correct link. But when I'm on chat, I can't type anywhere to chat. But when I put on the screen, and on my screen is where I turn off my camera and I mute, and then there's and then show conversations. When I click there, then I can chat on my right-hand side.
On your, I'm sorry, John Ray, will you please repeat?
Okay, so when I go to chat, like you showed me now, there's standing chat, recent contacts, and then an icon that looks like, I don't know what. So I can't chat there. So when I'm on my screen, and in the middle of my screen, there's the turn camera on or mute, and then more actions, and then show conversations. So when I click on show conversations, then I can also chat. But that's on my right-hand side. So I can't find the files when I click on the chat icon.
Okay.
Chandra, can I try to help you?
Yes, please.
Because we had the same problem. Are you using a mobile phone or a laptop or PC?
I'm on my laptop.
Okay, then I don't know because I'm using my phone. So like the page that you're talking about where at the bottom you see like the video where you can turn off the video and the mute button. Like right on top, does it say meeting? And then like in your on your right hand corner, there's like two little people with a plus sign. Do you find that anyway?
Sorry, say again quickly for me.
Like it's like the outline of two little people with a plus. Or basically, are you able to see all the attendees in the meeting?
Yes, when I click on participants, like show participants, then I can
and
see
then
all of it.
if you click on Mrs. Talyard's name,
Yes.
it should be view profile. Do you find that?
Let me just quickly see. And when I click on her name, it just says presenting Mrs. Unisa, and then chat, email.
So if you
view
go into that
organization.
chat section, in that
Yes.
chat section, if you click on there, are you able to type a message to her?
Yes, now I can type.
Yeah, so that's how I found it. So I actually messaged her and she said that that's the correct chat. Sorry, my baby's
Okay,
coming.
yes, and there I can also see the files option
Yes.
now. Thank you.
Yes, that's where we find it. No problem.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for that help. And
No problem.
I see in the chat, head office let us know that there is currently a problem with the Microsoft. There is a problem, but between the university and Microsoft, they're working on it. But now you have found a way to download the files I've shared with the group. So if you go to that, for those of you who haven't yet downloaded it, I have shared with you Maureen Isaacson's I Could Have Loved Gold. I'm going to assume not all of you have read the story, so I'm going to explain, tell you the story. I Could Have Loved Gold is basically the narrator. We don't even really know, we can assume kind of it's a girl because she speaks about what her dad kept for her coming of age. And that is a phrase that explains that people are now coming of age, means to turn 21. And he speaks about jewelry that he kept for her. So we can assume it is a kind of that she's a girl. And she has a father that's obviously in the gold mining industry. And she has an aunt who is okay, thank you, Zenat, because she says there are no files on her side, but she will listen, and then you can download it from e-resources anyway. So those of you who have no files, just send me an email, and then I will send you because it's a Microsoft problem, we can't solve it at the moment. Those of you who can't access files, just send me an email and I'll email you the files I've shared. I think that's a reasonable solution. Okay, the narrator is nameless, and we can speak about what is the effect of a nameless narrator. Anyway, her father is obsessed with his work, and he works in the gold mining industry, and he speaks about gold all the time. One of the ironies is that he speaks about the beauty of gold, but in real life, they live in a very grand neighborhood. Houghton is an old and very upmarket neighborhood in Johannesburg. So they live there, and they live obviously in a very upmarket house. But there's no love and laughter in the house. They have an aunt, and it's Aunt Sel. Now, the very name Sel creates the picture of a fun-loving person. You won't call a prude Sel. And she has contacts in Sophiatown. And Sophiatown was Johannesburg's District 6. Black people lived there, whereas in District 6 we had mostly colored people living there. But black people lived in Sophiatown, and it was a very vibrant society. They had shebeens and they had beautiful musicians. Some of those musicians left South Africa and became world famous. So it was a vibrant community, and they were simply moved to Soweto, and it became the suburb known as Triumph, which was more or less a working class suburb. But in that case, it became a very white, the working class suburb. Now, they live in Houghton, very grand, with his father. And then this aunt comes in from the outside. And although the whole story, the setting, is about what's happening in this house, the aunt comes in and she tells the story of what's happening. Then they have a dinner for her father's colleagues, and Aunt Sal arrives and she speaks about how tough it is for the miners, and it causes quite a lot of conflict. And for a while, Aunt Sal stays away. When she comes back, she's sad, and one gets the idea that she had a lover in Sophiatown, and she no longer speaks about him, and she moves to London. And the narrator and her brother miss her very much. And then on page 793, she said, I would have loved gold if it wasn't for Aunt Sal. And right at the end, I read it last night, I read it twice. He left us, I want to read to you the final paragraph. He left us finally with a weight as heavy as a gold bar, and the price we had to pay for his contribution to world economy. He left us. We don't know whether he left them for another household or whether he died. But this family stayed behind, and although they were very rich in money, they were poor in love and laughter and those things that give our lives actually some kind of meaning. And in this process, people are destroyed. What fun Aunt Sal had was destroyed when they destroyed Sophiatown. And another person that's destroyed in the story is the narrator's mother. He left us with a mother whose sheen was fast fading, and this mother is this quiet, retired person right through the short story. I want to read to you the introduction as well. Dad talked about gold all the time, gold standards and shares and world markets and creating work for the masses. The intonation of his voice acted as a soporific on mother. A soporific is something that puts you to sleep. So he is so boring. He is so removed from their lives that they feel like falling asleep when he starts speaking. and her already pale countenance appearance, and air of absence further dissolved. My little brother Jonathan would dip his middle finger into the butter, and my aunt would yawn. Can you see this laughterless lunch? But sometimes she'd say something, and the two would hiss like prize bantams in a sparring match. So in the first paragraph, we see this father with his obsession with gold, and we see the mother that although she's there, she doesn't bring energy to the table. She doesn't encourage them to have a discussion. She's already disappearing. And then, but sometimes she'd say something and the two would hiss like prize bantams. So the only energy we would get is from this fight between the father and the aunt. If you look at your assignment, the short stories, the assignment that you have to do is our Christmas reunion. Now, in the first question, they asked us about diction and tone. It's on page 10. If you have your study guides with you, it's on page 10 of the 101 tutorial letter. On page 84 of the short story, a nun discovers a group of boys playing with a condom. What do her diction and tone tell us about her attitude toward sex? Your answer should identify specific words and phrases from the text and explain how they convey this attitude. Now, if you go to, we're going back to the PowerPoint. Oh, let me quickly speak to you about paraphrasing. You have to read the text carefully. Put the original text aside and write your paraphrase in your own words. Review it. Include an in-text citation in the expected formatting style and explain why the paraphrased information is important. So when you quote information from your study guide, you need to link it to the question. Otherwise, it is honestly like two ships floating on the sea. We don't know even if they are traveling in the same direction. So look at the question I've asked you. On page 792 of this short story is a description of the father talking. What does the diction and tone of the first paragraph tell the reader about the father? You should identify specific words and phrases from the text and explain how they convey the effect of the father on the household. Now, for those of you, do you see why I say that if you have a study group, you are not likely to commit plagiarism, because I'm speaking to you, and if you are making notes, as you should at the moment, it is important that when you make notes, you have to understand what I'm saying, because I'm speaking far faster than you can make notes. You can't write down what I'm saying verbatim. So you have And because you have to understand, you cannot commit plagiarism. Sorry, I need to answer a question from head office. So if all of you can see the slide now, here we have the first paragraph that I asked the question about. Now, like in your question, like in your assignment, you have to identify specific words and phrases. If we link it to that slide that we had about where do I put my full stop? If I quote only words from this, do you know where, and my quote is at the end of the sentence, do you know where to put your full stop? That is a question. If you cannot do it, it would be a good idea, those of you who do have access to the chat, that you actually write there whether you know or not. Okay, now let's have a look at the specific words and phrases. I'm going to go out of so that I can highlight the words and phrases. I'm going to go back to the working screen. If you take this, that tells us that the father, he talked about, indicate that he was communicating to them. He didn't take trouble to ask them about their day. So he was speaking to them from a dizzy height. And we see and that creates a distance. When you talk about one thing all the time and you don't make the effort to ask people questions, how they are. So he talked about gold all the time. There's no idea, no image of interaction between him and his children. And can you imagine, later on, my little brother Jonathan would dip his middle finger into the butter. So this Jonathan was so young that he would still be able to get away by dipping his finger into the butter. Would a child like that be interested in gold standard and shares? So from this phrase and from this one, dip his middle finger into the butter, we can already see the distance between the father and his children. Sorry, that mark disappeared now. And then also how boring the aunt would find it because she's yawning. To me, the saddest one acted as a soporific on mother. So the mother is falling asleep while he's speaking. And we get the idea that the mother, they speak about her pale countenance, her pale appearance. She seems to be disappearing, dissolved. Sugar dissolves in tea. So the mother is disappearing in front of their eyes. And then we get, and look how the hypocrisy. He speaks about gold standard and shares and world markets. And then his excuse for being so obsessed with his work is that it's creating work for the masses. So I can motivate my answer by taking certain words about the distance between the father and the children, the father and his wife, and I can motivate the conflict between the father and the aunt by quoting certain words. Now, if you look at your tutorial letter 501 and you go to page 45, they speak about what kind of words have you used, and yeah, they speak about what kind of words have you used. So by concentrating on the words, we can infer certain information about the characters in this story. Something else that when you prepare this story, you need to read up about the myth about King Midas. King Midas was very rich and he could make a wish, and he wished that everything he would touch would turn to gold, and he absolutely loved it. He touched everything and it became gold. And then his girl came in and he hugged her and she turned into a golden statue. So the father is like King Midas. He wants everything to turn into gold. And that is an image that you need to understand to understand this short story. What I would like you to do is to try and answer the questions I've given you, and I'll post to the chat. Maybe it will work better if I link it also to a specific chat. Then you can compare your answers to mine and see if it works out. Now, questions on setting. On page 43 and 4, they have information about how to answer from about a setting, because they ask you here further descriptions of the house, however, seem to suggest that the family is not as happy as one would expect. And there you see an example of how they quote in the sentence. I've referred to the 501 because all of you by this time have access to the study material. So the question is again based on what the question paper, the assignment that you have to answer. The setting plays an important part in the story and is central to the message of the story. Explain how the setting is conveyed and how this description contributes towards the overall meaning. I want to go back to the screen where we chat. Do you have any questions up till now? I'm worried because you don't ask questions, because if you ask questions, then you are staying with the argument. What I want you to know, after I've now spoken about the diction and tone. Diction means the choice of words. Why did the author choose certain words? Why did she use the word soporific instead of tranquilizer? If you think about yourself, how many of you knew the word soporific? And how many of you know the word tranquilizer? Why did she choose a word that is less well known than another word? And in the same way, you need to go through the short story and look at the words the nun speaks. Which words show that she has a hang-up about sex and sex education? In the and then tone. What tone? Tone is if this young girl had been reading or telling you this story, what emotion would we have heard in her voice? I get the idea that she's actually removed from this family. She is an observer. So the father's coldness and distance from his family have crept into her being as well. In the next question, the setting plays an important part in the story and is central to the message of the story. Explain how the setting is conveyed and how this description contributes towards the overall meaning. If you look at, those of you who have access to the short story, she speaks about into the spotless order of our Houghton mansion. So it's not a place that she remembers with love. It is spotless order. It sounds more like a hospital or a clinic or a bank than a warm house. And on the bottom of page 793, she said, when I think about the mansion now, made, polished and ordered, it echoes with a drab silence. And all those words, they're part of the description, the setting, and the setting seems to have no life. I keep on giving you these page references because that's the information you get from the study guide, and you must be able to put that information into your own words and answer the question. The title of the story is repeated in the sentence, I would have loved gold. Sorry, if it wasn't for Aunt Sal. Explain the title by referring to the conflict between Aunt Sal and the narrator's father. Sorry, I have a dry throat at the moment. You get a question in your assignment about the title as well. If I say, I would have loved, it means I don't love. And it is at the end of a sentence where she speaks about all the gold that they have in that house, her mother's jewelry, gold plates and vases he brought back from his travels, the gold-bound books, and the thought of being as good as gold and silence being golden. I would have loved gold if it wasn't for Aunt Sal, because where the narrator's father is this strict distance person, Aunt Sal goes out into the world and she experiences it. And she comes back and she exposes the children to the damage caused by the mining industry, who had little respect for the miners and the people who work there. And if you read the scene that she makes at the dinner table, we get an idea of how much suffering there was. Then there's also a question about imagery and symbolism. Gold functions as an important symbol in the story. In your assignment, they also, yes, the goat, there's a goat purchased on behalf of Selby, the narrator's brother, function as a symbol in the story. So gold is a symbol in the story. Write a paragraph in which you explain the symbolism as well as the allusion to the myth of King Midas. So in your assignment, and there you have to turn to page 58 of your, go to page 58 of your 501. And there's a whole piece on imagery and symbolism. Now, what I suggest is that when you do your assignment, you read this about imagery and symbolism, and you have a look at how do they put these sentences, what information do they give me, and at the back of your study guide, they have a list, or they speak about a toolkit where they give you information. And if you look there, they have a definition of a symbol. So you work from the definition, you work and you say how it is applied in your short story. In this case, it's the gold. From what I've told you, what do you think of what is gold a symbol in this short story? you can turn on your microphones and speak to me if you don't want to chat in the meeting chat. What do you think of what is gold, of the things I've told you, of what is gold a symbol? Come on, people, work with me.
Being rich, Mrs. Stalliard?
It is a symbol of wealth. What is generally expected of wealthy people? If you have wealthy relatives, or if you are wealthy yourself, what is enjoyable about being wealthy?
Could it be luxuries and luxurious things?
Yes, you are able to enjoy luxury. From what I've told you, do you get the idea that the family enjoy their wealth? Yes, they said, I can only see your, turn off your, speak, please. If you're not speaking, you need to turn off your microphone. Yes, try any answer. From what I've told you, is this a family that enjoy their wealth?
No, ma'am.
No, they don't. We have one paragraph in which she says how she played with her mother's jewelry, but and she admires it. But even this admiration ends with the sentence, I could have loved gold if it wasn't for Aunt Sal. So even when they do play with the gold, it never becomes fun, because it's tainted with that idea that all this gold was bought with other people's hard work, and those miners aren't paid properly. If you look at, and let me just quickly go back, because there was something else I wanted to say about the, and then the allusion to the myth of King Midas. The father is like King Midas. And I put this in because it's part of what they often do in an exam. But if you work with your e-tutor, the e-tutor would have explained the myth of King Midas as well. So in the myth, King Midas learned that gold isn't everything, because he doesn't want a golden statue. He wants a real girl. Now, in this story, the father doesn't learn that people and relationships are more important than gold, because in the final paragraph they say, because he left us. So he doesn't learn that relationships are important. But like the girl in the myth of King Midas, she comes alive when King Midas has learned his lesson. although the father doesn't learn a lesson, this narrator learns a lesson. She learns that gold can't buy you happiness, because I read the final paragraph to you. It's a very sad paragraph. She speaks about her father left them and the mother simply disappeared. She speaks about her sheen faded. Now, sheen is um, is based on the word shine. So like gold, when it's not polished, will lose its sheen. Her mother lost whatever beauty and inner beauty she might have had. The mother loses that as well. Do you see that we take a symbol, and in a way we can personalize a symbol? For instance, you can say that gold means wealth to one person, and to somebody else it may mean luxury. That would be fine. And also, to give somebody gold and jewelry is usually a sign of love and affection. So you take, but to one person it meant wealth, to somebody else it means luxury. But if you see the symbolism of something in a story, an object or an idea, if you see the symbolism, it must be in the public domain. I myself, for some other reason, isn't very fond of gold, but it's a very personal thing. And my feelings about gold as such, I can't put that into the story. I would have loved gold, because there the symbolism must still fit into the general story being told. You can't really move into the personal at all. If we look at the next question. It's a question about the theme. What do you think is the main theme of the short story, I Could Have Loved Gold? Write a paragraph, and somewhere they said that the paragraphs are usually 15 lines, in which you account for your decision by identifying and explaining the significance of the insight the narrator gains during the story. Now, from what I've said, what do you think is the main theme of this story? I've given you the answer through while we were speaking anyway. What do you see?
I think that it's mostly about that gold is not everything, and that we should also treasure the people that we have around us, and that we shouldn't take them for granted.
Yes, I think if I try to put it into academic English, I would say that personal wealth does not guarantee personal happiness, because it's this very rich family who is so poor in quality of life. And then another theme, if you think of the development in the narrator from what I've told you, what would you say is the theme there? I think the daughter speaks with much affection of her Aunt Sal, and she speaks of her mother with sympathy. So, whereas the first theme, that personal wealth does not guarantee personal happiness, we have a glimmer of hope that we can learn from other people's mistakes. The narrator learns from her father not to love gold, but to appreciate other people. She's obviously also fond of her brother Jonathan. She somewhere in the story she tells how they hide in the passage to eavesdrop on the conversation between the adults. So, and my little brother who put his finger into the butter, you know, she has fond memories of her brother. She's obviously fond of her aunt, and she speaks of her mother with empathy. She's not bitter because her mother didn't stand up to her father. She had the ability to develop sympathy, even though she had this cold and distant father. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think her development is also political in nature.
Yes.
That she compares the mining magnates sitting around the table with the miners that are getting the gold. And there's that development, and that's also the difference between her father and Aunt Sal.
Yes, and that is this whole, if I had you for a face-to-face tutorial and we were discussing this in class, I would have paid far more attention to the political implications from the story. But I agree with you that she also develops the ability to move away from her father's political views. And the way that she describes in such detail the Shebeens. And remember, she hadn't been to the Shebeens, but she remembers her aunt's description so well that she can actually use it in this story. So yes, there's definitely a political theme in this story. Anything else that you would like to add? Did I give you all 5 questions? Yes. The question on the title, the question on the setting, and the first question. Yes, I did all of them. Then, yes. Is there another question? Sweetie, you must put off your video. Otherwise, you are taking up, I don't know who's currently on the video, but if you do not put on your video, you will have far better sound and you will use less data. So you can put on your microphone, but you must put off your video. What I want to speak to you about before, I should have put it in the beginning where I wanted to speak about it, but I'm going to share with you your My UNISA screen. I'm going to go in. You can see my screen still, can't you?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, because the other day the postgrads couldn't see my. Do you see this one? This on your, can you see what I'm going to open? The sites launcher. Now, if you go to the site launcher, here it won't appear with mind you, maybe, no. Oh, there. There you will, do you see there is a site with a code and it ends on an E. How many of you are using the e-tutor?
I
am.
actually haven't been assigned an e-tutor yet.
You must write to
I've
the
queried
department.
about it, but no one has gotten back to me.
Write me an email and I'll forward it to the lady who has to cope with it.
Thank you so much.
Because you, the ENG1501 department takes an extremely lot of trouble with their e-tutors. And even though it's costing me money because I'm a face-to-face tutor for ENG 1501, that's why I'm taking you separately from other modules. And they haven't given us the go-ahead to have these classes as face-to-face tutors. I can only do it as an academic literacy. But they've worked out a program on your, if I open my own ENG and I go to the official study material, I suppose yours look like this as well. Do you see this one? They have a list of e-tutor activities and they give you a very, very specific week by week how to work through the module. Because I can warn you now, it is because I have to prepare parts of it and it is a lot of work and you will have to do all of that for the exam at the end of the year. You won't be able to catch up on the work outside the assignments in 2 or 3 weeks. And the e-tutors take you through that journey. That, like I've said, and a kind of mock assignment for you. They work with you through the questions on the poetry, and you can ask them questions and they should respond to that. So it's very important that you go onto the e-tutor site. Another skill that's developed if you work with the e-tutor is that because you write your answers and questions, you already have to think carefully. And then again, you take a step away from plagiarism. If you sit down and say, but I can't see the symbolism in gold, and you write to the e-tutor, because with the e-tutor, you can communicate on your phone. You don't need a computer for it. So when you write your question to it, already you have to think and you write it in English and immediately you start putting ideas into words and you move away from the plagiarism. So if I have to summarize what you had to learn today, Now I can't get back to the chat. Oh. There I am. Okay, I'm back with you. When you quote, you can't answer the assignment without working through the activities in 501. When you use definitions or information from the study guide, you have to acknowledge that correctly. You are lucky in a way that there isn't much information about the short story on the internet. So at least you miss out on that trap for plagiarism. You don't need to to go and look for, it's not a research assignment, this one. It is a close reading assignment. If you look at the assignment, the final sentence, the subtotal, so for content, it's 50. But how you write, the use of language, organization, and the structure of your assignment counts just as much. It's 50 marks. Ladies and gentlemen, the lockdown ends hopefully on Friday, which means that some of you will have to might be able to go back to work, and you may have less time. You cannot finish this assignment in one day. You have to work on it, think a bit, and go back and think a bit more. So it's very important for you to start working immediately. I have a sore throat, and I hope it's not a sign of something else, because I've spoken such a lot and you should actually have spoken more. Are there any more questions?
Will this recording be available for us to maybe get on the Mayonnaise website?
Yes, Richard puts it on quite quickly, and then you can access it from there. Just for interest's sake, if you listen to a recording of a lesson that you've attended, what will you be looking for?
Because I wasn't able to attend the class right from the beginning, so there was quite a bit that I missed out on.
Okay. So that's what you are going to do.
Yes, also I think to listen to the recording would be a good idea, so that you can get a more wholesome understanding of what exactly was explained. To listen to it more than once.
Yes, it is. My son works with Teams for his meetings as well. And he said that if you go to that chat, I haven't used it, but if you go to chat, apparently you can make notes. I see here you have added some stories. How do we quote from the short story? When you quote from the short story, it would be Isaacson, and then the year that it was written. I can't. 1992. So it would be Isaacson, 1992, and then you give only the page number. It's not like the poetry where you have to give the line reference as well. Does that answer your question, Danielle? I hope so. And then Oh, this one. Yes, I agree with Zina that they would, but she's right here. I think the family wants to enjoy the finer things in life, like spending time in their garden, playing catch, or something as a family and laughing. Yes, that was what the family would have liked to do. So if you have questions about it, you may, I would advise you to get into the habit of contacting your e-tutor, because they are supposed to give you the answers, and they have access to the lecturers more than I do. So they will be able to give you answers. But like some of you have done, if you have finished your assignment, but you must give me at least a week's time, because I get in many assignments at a time, you can email me the assignment, and then I can check. I won't change your answer, but I can look at the structure and see if you have applied the right structure. But you must, if you give it to me, remember I have about 2 days in which to send it back, and then you must have at least another day in which to make changes if you agree with my changes before you submit it.
Ms. Talia, is there, where do we find your email address?
I have spelled it already. You are on your phone, so you can't see the chats.
No, I can't see the chats.
Okay, I'll spell my email again. It's ETAL JAM dot or at UNISA .ac.za.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, pleasure. Listen, I know some of you sound a bit older, but in my mind, you're about a year older than my last matric class. So I see you all as younger than 20. And these teleconferences or online learning is not an easy experience. I really appreciate the fact that you kept so calm and that you really gave your cooperation. What I would appreciate from you is we are going to have more of these. What I would appreciate of you, if you can let me know more or less, I prefer the 12 to 2 slot, but what time would suit you, and what is it that you really struggle with the assignments and English, so that I can develop a skills program to work with you and try and solve those questions. You can either email me or you can put it on the chat. Now, I think your ears are tired. Please stay safe and look after yourself. And see you in then, I think, a week or two's time. Be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.